Hey friends, thanks for stopping by my YouTube channel. I really appreciate you being here. The topic for today is alcohol. We're gonna dive right in. So if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Feel free to drop a like, leave a comment, and send this video to anyone that you think may find it helpful. So let's dive right in. Booze. I thought I would talk a little bit today about my personal journey with alcohol, share a little bit of my family history, and then my thought process around alcohol right now at 42. So alcoholism, addiction is in my family. So I grew up with it. And I guess it's important to note that the research around alcohol abuse does indicate that genetics do play a factor. They're not solely responsible, and there isn't like an alcoholism gene. It's like a number of characteristics or genes combined. But folks that have alcoholism in their family, and if there's, particularly if it's sort of like rampant and there's more than one person, do have some predisposition to the disease or disorder. So yeah, there's that's always been on my mind. So knowing that about my family history is always kind of, it's always lurking. I've always thought about it. But it's not the only factor that influences alcoholism. So your environment obviously is a big piece, and so many pieces of that environment. So if people have been exposed to abuse, if they experience a lot of stress and they don't have great coping mechanisms, there's a lot of different things that can factor in. So you get these perfect, you get the perfect storm, and you do have a higher likelihood of developing some dependency on alcohol. So my history is that I've always been very aware of it, and being an athlete, I've always really thought about managing it. And I think, I've talked about this with a few people, and my husband in particular, how being involved in sport, I think, has always helped me in a lot of ways. But I think it's one of the reasons why, that was my coping mechanism in terms of stress and just having a really positive outlet is just sport, wanting to be great at, whatever sport it was I was pursuing at any given time in my life. So obviously drinking doesn't lend itself really well to being a great athlete, although there is a culture of binge drinking. I think sometimes it can happen with athletes for sure. I definitely have witnessed that. Growing up, I think if you've followed my journey, I've talked about striking the right balance. I think a lot of coaches do. There is some balance, and we kind of, pick your poison literally, because that's at the end of the day what alcohol is. It is poison. So is it reasonable to tell people you can never drink, especially if someone has, a real desire and really enjoys it and manages to find the right balance for themselves? It's really a personal choice. I do have a few issues, and I've definitely really thought about this, and I've really found myself thinking about it a lot in the last I'd say 6 months to a year. Maybe COVID has, the pandemic has really kind of brought it to the forefront as I watch people drink more and more, and it's really something that has been very noticeable, and the amount of people that have died because of alcohol in 2021 is actually insane. We've seen this huge spike in deaths related to alcohol, but no one's really talking about it. No one's really focused on it, and I think that's kind of sad. So I started paying more attention to it, and for multiple reasons. Obviously, family history. I kind of found myself in this spot, especially probably about a year ago when we were really deep in lockdowns. Going I am having a drink a day. This is not who I am. This doesn't align with my goals at all. It's you get to this place where you realize I'm self-soothing with alcohol. Like, it's the end of a hard day. I just get the work done, and I earned this booze. This is my reward. And it becomes this habit. Finish the work day, even get your workout in, do your thing, crack a beer or have a glass of wine. And I know that I got there, and I think a lot of clients got there. A lot of people I know got there, even if you weren't a client. And I think too, we sort of reinforce the behavior and the habits by like kind of looking at what other people are doing, and other people validate our choices by doing it as well. So we kind of almost like encourage each other and support each other, and we keep making these choices. And we definitely see like the industry marketing to us in a certain way. It's kind of like a glamorous sort of sexy thing to do. Like, here I am with my drink in my hand. So anyways, I think it's just important to have some self-awareness around alcohol. And the reason I'm talking about it is because I know, like, in the last couple of years, I have had to really take a step back and look at the balance that I was striking. And then really start to ask myself, like, is this a great coping mechanism? Am I addressing things the way that I need to? Like, I feel this heightened level of stress, like day strain is just through the roof because so much has changed. And there's obviously a lot of stuff that, everybody is dealing with in the last couple of years. So I had to step back for myself personally and really acknowledge that I just was not happy with the direction that that things were going. So I started looking at the content that I was consuming. I started following and listening to a lot more podcasts rooted in health. I didn't want to follow accounts and look at content that basically enabled my behavior and encouraged it, and just sort of said like, oh girl, you're just surviving right now, have a drink. To me, that's not appropriate, and people and encouraging that behavior is not appropriate. But again, your feed and your content consumption is ultimately up to you. But if you have this feeling inside that maybe you're not happy with the choices that you're making, then you have to face it and take ownership of it, and possibly not, consume content that just validates you making those choices over and over again. So I started consuming more content that was really not necessarily talking about like the benefits of not drinking, but just talking about health, like talking about like ways to improve your longevity, ways to, just feel your best, have tons of energy, gain more muscle, in some cases if you want to be leaner, and really just taking in that kind of content. And I found myself just naturally sort of making some changes. So by auditing my consumption, I was able to just naturally start wanting to do these things. And obviously it lends itself really well to the way I live. So I'm feeling better in workouts, I'm sleeping better, I'm recovering better. Like you start making these changes and you get this positive feedback from how you're feeling, and then you just keep stacking those positive behaviors. I don't have a really big social life. I work and I kind of, I'm pretty much a homebody, and I stick to, very close friends, a couple, and some family. So I didn't really have to necessarily audit my circle in the sense that like there wasn't like a ton of people around me that are just constantly drinking and I have to battle that. But that might be something that you need to do if you have that pull towards that call, towards sobriety, and you want to explore it. But your social circle is just, it's impossible because they're always drinking. You might need to audit your circle if that's something that you desire. If you want to move in a direction of maybe just being a bit more moderate, then the people around you might need to be a bit more moderate too, at least initially. I think that could be very helpful. So that is my video. I talk a little bit about alcohol in terms of like how it impacts performance and recovery and body composition. And honestly, what we know is that it's not inherently fattening. Having a drink isn't necessarily like, oh my gosh, I'm gaining fat by doing this. That's not really what happens. It's usually the choices that we make around alcohol. We have a drink and then inhibition kicks in around food, and then we have the pizza, and then we have the bag of chips, and then we wake up the next day and we feel shame. And is it the shame towards drinking, or is it the shame towards all the terrible choices? Or is it, you're just cranky because you didn't sleep at all because you drank again? So, I guess really the video is more about just like taking a step back and having an honest conversation with yourself about whether or not, you're just not happy with the choices that you're making, especially if you have some goals in regards to your health and fitness and this is a barrier for you. And I guess that's another reason why I think it's important to talk about it, is that it's just such a barrier for so many people where they have these goals, they put in this work, but they just can't seem to limit themselves with alcohol. So I think, using some of the advice that I've sort of talked about, like auditing the content that you're consuming, trying to pull in more positive content, looking at your social circle is really important. And then just making some habit changes. If you feel like you've got to have something to drink in the evening, maybe it's replacing it with a non-alcoholic option. Something I do for sure, and feels better, sleep better, have a better next day, and win all around. I hope you found this video helpful. If you are, obviously, there are certain degrees here in terms of if you're somebody that's really struggling, there are resources, there are, supports out there for you. So obviously that's something that you kind of need to acknowledge and work through, and hopefully you have the support that you need. If you're someone that is just like, I think it's maybe a little bit too far, obviously, I'm working, I'm doing stuff, but I know I could do a little bit better in that department. That's kind of who this video is really speaking to. And I hope that you found it helpful.